What if the snacks that fed an entire generation of American families cost less than a single modern protein bar, took less than 10 minutes to make, and tasted better than anything sitting in your pantry right now? Consider this. Number 23 on this list cost a family of 6 about 40 cents to make in 1973 and fed them for 3 straight nights of card games. Number 14 was invented by a widow in Texas during the Great Depression who had nothing but egg whites, sugar, and a hand crank. Number 9 sat on 90% of American holiday tables between 1965 and 1979, and it cost less than $1 to assemble. Number 7 was the single most common after-school snack in working-class American homes for 3 decades running, and most of you have forgotten it exists. What you are about to hear has been sitting in your family's past the whole time. You just never knew to look for it. If this matters to you, subscribe before we begin. The countdown starts now. Number 25. Homemade Chex Party Mix. A box of corn Chex cost 49 cents in 1972. Add wheat Chex, rice Chex, a sleeve of pretzels, a handful of mixed nuts, and 6 tablespoons of butter. Total cost, under $2, fed 12 guests. You melt the butter slow in a low oven. You stir in Worcestershire sauce until the kitchen smells like a steakhouse. Garlic powder, onion salt, seasoned salt. You pour it over the cereal in a roasting pan and stir it with a wooden spoon every 15 minutes. The edges go dark. The nuts turn glossy. The whole house smells like something is happening. Ralston Purina printed the recipe on the back of the Chex box in 1952. By 1965, it was the default snack at every Midwestern card party, bowling league banquet, and church social from Ohio to Nebraska. For a generation living on fixed incomes, this was a snack that stretched. One batch lasted a week in a tin on the counter. It did not go stale. It did not judge you for eating it cold at midnight. Number 24. Cinnamon Sugar Toast. 2 slices of white bread, a pat of butter, a teaspoon of sugar, a shake of cinnamon. Total cost in 1974, under 4 cents per serving. You butter the bread while it is still warm from the toaster. The butter melts into the holes. You mix the sugar and cinnamon in a little glass jar with a shaker lid. You sprinkle it heavy. The sugar dissolves into the butter and forms a thin candy crust that cracks when you bite it. This was not invented by anyone famous. It was invented by every mother in every small town who needed to put something sweet in front of a crying child before school. It spread through rural America in the 1940s and 1950s because it used ingredients every kitchen already had. For a tired grandparent watching grandchildren on a Saturday morning, this was dignity in a plate. No special trip to the store, no shame in the simplicity. Just warm bread and the smell of cinnamon filling the kitchen. Number 23. Stovetop Popcorn. A pound of popcorn kernels cost 39 cents in 1975. It made roughly 30 bowls. Do the math. You heat 3 tablespoons of oil in a heavy pot with a lid. You drop 3 kernels in. When they pop, the oil is ready. You pour in a half cup of kernels, put the lid on, and shake the pot across the burner. The first pop comes in about 30 seconds. Then the sound becomes a storm. You pull it off the heat when the pops slow to 1 per second. Salt, butter, done. Popcorn was cultivated by indigenous peoples in the Americas for over 5,000 years. By the 1930s, it had become the Depression-era snack of choice because a nickel bag fed a whole family at the movies. For anyone watching this who has not made popcorn on a stove in 20 years, remember this. The microwave bag costs 90 cents. The stovetop serving costs 3. Same snack, better taste. Your grandmother knew. Number 22. Divinity candy. 2 cups of sugar, a half cup of corn syrup, 2 egg whites, a cup of chopped pecans. In 1976, this cost under $1 and made 40 pieces. You boil the sugar syrup to 260 degrees. You beat the egg whites until they stand in peaks. You pour the hot syrup into the whites in a slow thread while beating. The candy turns white and glossy. You drop it by spoonfuls onto wax paper. It sets in 20 minutes into something that tastes like a cloud of sweet almond. Divinity came out of the American South in the early 1900s. It spread through Texas, Georgia, and Tennessee as a Christmas candy. Women made it in church kitchens the week before the holiday. Why did we stop making this? Who decided that a candy costing under $1 was beneath a holiday table? The answer is nobody. We just forgot. Number 21. Caramel corn. Popcorn from entry 23. A stick of butter. A cup of brown sugar. A quarter cup of corn syrup. A half teaspoon of baking soda. In 1977, total cost 70 cents. You pop the corn. You melt the butter and sugar and syrup together and boil it for 5 minutes. You stir in the baking soda and watch the caramel foam up like a living thing. You pour it over the popcorn and stir fast. You spread it on a sheet pan and bake it at 250 degrees for an hour, stirring every 15 minutes. The smell that comes out of that oven is the smell of every county fair in the 1970s. Caramel corn began as a street food in the Midwest in the 1890s. By the 1970s, it was the homemade answer to Cracker Jack. 1 batch in a tin fed a household for 10 days. For a retiree on a fixed income in 1978, that was not a treat. That was engineering. Number 20. Deviled eggs with paprika. A dozen eggs cost 59 cents in 1973. Add mayonnaise, mustard, and paprika from the spice rack. 24 deviled eggs for under $1. You boil the eggs hard. You run them under cold water. You peel them under the tap so the shells slip off in sheets. You slice them lengthwise and pop the yolks into a bowl. You mash them with mayo, yellow mustard, a pinch of salt, and a splash of vinegar. You spoon the filling back into the whites and dust them with paprika that turns red against the yellow. Deviled eggs trace back to ancient Rome, but the American version with mayonnaise became standard between 1940 and 1960 at every picnic, funeral, and potluck from Maine to California. For seniors managing limited energy, this was a snack that required no standing, no stove, no chopping. Sit at the kitchen table, peel, mash, fill. Done in 20 minutes. Here is something nobody says out loud. The snacks on this list were not made because people wanted to make them. They were made because there was nothing else. A pound of ground beef cost too much. A packaged snack from the store was out of reach. So a woman in a small kitchen looked at what she had and made something out of it. That woman was your mother, or your grandmother, or a stranger who did the same thing in another town you have never been to. And here is what nobody wants to admit. The food tasted better than what you buy now. Not because it was fancy, because it was made. Somebody stood at a counter. Somebody stirred a pot. Somebody cared enough to turn almost nothing into something. That is what is missing from the plastic bag you opened last night. Not an ingredient, a person. Number 19. Cheese ball. 2 blocks of cream cheese, a cup of shredded sharp cheddar, Worcestershire sauce, garlic powder, a cup of chopped pecans for the coating. In 1975, total cost about $2.50. You let the cream cheese soften on the counter for an hour. You mix it with the cheddar and seasonings in a bowl with a wooden spoon. You shape it into a ball with your hands. You roll it in the chopped pecans until it is completely covered. You wrap it in plastic and chill it overnight. The cheese ball became a fixture at American cocktail parties between 1960 and 1985, appearing in Betty Crocker cookbooks and Good Housekeeping spreads. Wisconsin dairy farmers pushed the recipe hard. Serve it on a plate with Ritz crackers. It feeds 10 people at a holiday party. For a host on a tight budget, this was the centerpiece that bought respect. Number 18. Jell-O salad molds. A box of Jell-O cost 10 cents in 1972. Add canned fruit cocktail, a can of condensed milk, and whatever was in the cupboard. Feeds 8 for under $1. You dissolve the Jell-O in boiling water. You stir in the cold water and the condensed milk. You fold in the fruit, the nuts, sometimes shredded carrots, sometimes cottage cheese. You pour it into a bundt-shaped mold and chill it overnight. You dip the mold in warm water and flip it onto a plate. The dome wobbles when you set it down. Jell-O salads exploded in American homes between 1955 and 1980. They were the centerpiece of church potlucks in the Midwest and South. Modern food writers mock this dish. Your grandmother called it dessert. She knew something you have forgotten. Cold, sweet, and shared beats expensive and alone every time. Number 17. Ants on a log. A stalk of celery, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, a handful of raisins. In 1976, 3 cents per serving. You wash the celery and cut it into 4-inch sticks. You fill the groove with peanut butter using a butter knife. You press raisins into the peanut butter in a line so they look like ants marching down the log. This snack was invented in the 1950s by home economics teachers in American public schools as a way to teach children that vegetables could be fun. It spread through 4-H clubs in rural Iowa, Kansas, and Nebraska. For a grandparent watching a grandchild, this is a snack that costs nothing and teaches something. The child makes it themselves. They press each raisin in, they count the ants, they eat what they made. That is a memory you cannot buy in a store. Number 16. Salmon mousse. A can of pink salmon cost 89 cents in 1974. Add cream cheese, lemon juice, dill, and a packet of unflavored gelatin. Feeds 12 for under $2. You drain the salmon and flake it with a fork. You beat the cream cheese until it is smooth. You bloom the gelatin in cold water and then warm it until it dissolves. You fold everything together with lemon juice and chopped dill. You pour it into a fish-shaped mold and chill it overnight. You flip it onto a bed of parsley with a slice of olive for an eye. Serve it with saltine crackers. Salmon mousse was a staple of American entertaining from 1965 to 1985, appearing in Julia Child's Mastering the Art of French Cooking, and adapted down to supermarket ingredients by home cooks nationwide. For a host in 1978 who wanted to impress the neighbors on a $30 monthly entertaining budget, this was the answer. Number 15. Lipton Onion Soup Dip. A packet of Lipton onion soup mix cost 29 cents in 1973. A pint of sour cream cost 59 cents. Total dip cost under $1. Feeds a party. You empty the packet into the sour cream. You stir it with a spoon until the brown flecks are evenly distributed. You cover it and chill it for 1 hour so the dried onions rehydrate. You serve it with a bag of Lay's potato chips. That is the entire recipe. It has not changed since Lipton printed it on the back of the packet in 1954. Known nationwide as California Dip, it became the default Super Bowl snack in American living rooms from 1965 onward. It appeared at every neighborhood gathering, every Tupperware party, every PTA meeting in suburban America. For anyone who says cooking has to be complicated, this is the answer. 2 ingredients, 1 hour. 40 years of American memory in a plastic bowl. Number 14. Pigs in a blanket. A pack of Hillshire Farm cocktail wieners cost $1.19 in 1976. A can of Pillsbury Crescent dough cost 69 cents. Total under $2. Makes 30. You unroll the crescent dough on a floured counter. You cut each triangle into 3 smaller triangles. You place a wiener at the wide end and roll it up tight. You line them on a baking sheet. You bake them at 375 degrees for 12 minutes until the dough is golden and the kitchen smells like butter and salt. You serve them hot on a platter with a bowl of yellow mustard. The recipe appeared in Betty Crocker's Cookie Book in 1963 and became the most common finger food at American children's birthday parties for the next 20 years. Number 13. Grape jelly meatballs. A pound of ground beef cost 89 cents in 1974. A jar of Welch's grape jelly cost 79 cents. A bottle of Heinz chili sauce cost 95 cents. Under $3 total. Feeds 16 at a party. You roll the ground beef into 1-inch balls and brown them in a skillet. You pour off the fat. You dump the jelly and chili sauce into a slow cooker. You add the meatballs. You stir. You cover it and let it cook on low for 3 hours. The sauce turns a dark, glossy red. The meat goes tender. The house smells sweet and tangy and strange in a way that makes people ask what you are making. Number 12. Stuffed celery. A bunch of celery cost 39 cents in 1975. A block of cream cheese cost 49 cents. Makes 20 pieces for under $1. You wash the celery and cut the stalks into 3-inch pieces. You soften the cream cheese on the counter. You stir in a little pimento, a little grated onion, and a shake of seasoned salt. You spread the filling into the grooves of the celery with a butter knife and smooth the tops. You arrange them on a plate with the filling side up. The green of the celery against the pink-flecked white of the cream cheese looks like something from a 1960s hostess handbook. Number 11. Cheese straws. A cup of sharp cheddar, a cup of flour, a stick of butter, a pinch of cayenne. In 1976, total cost about $1. Makes 60 straws. You grate the cheese fine. You cut the butter into the flour with a fork until it looks like coarse sand. You mix in the cheese and cayenne and press it all into a dough. You push the dough through a cookie press fitted with a star disc. You bake the straws at 350 degrees for 15 minutes until they turn orange and crisp. The smell when they come out of the oven is sharp and salty and unmistakable. Cheese straws are a Southern American institution dating back to the 1880s, served at weddings, funerals, and church socials across Georgia, South Carolina, and Mississippi. Number 10. Popcorn balls. Popcorn from entry 23. A cup of corn syrup, a cup of sugar, a stick of butter, vanilla, food coloring if you want. In 1977, total cost 50 cents. Makes 12 balls. You pop the corn and put it in a big greased bowl. You boil the syrup, sugar, butter, and vanilla together to the soft ball stage, 235 degrees on a candy thermometer. You pour the syrup over the popcorn and stir fast with a wooden spoon. You butter your hands. You grab handfuls and shape them into balls while the caramel is still warm but cool enough to handle. Number 9. Clam dip. A can of minced clams cost 69 cents in 1974. A block of cream cheese cost 49 cents. Under $1.50. Feeds a party. You drain the clams but save 2 tablespoons of the juice. You soften the cream cheese. You mix in the clams, the reserved juice, a squeeze of lemon, a dash of Worcestershire, and a little garlic powder. You chill it for 2 hours. Number 8. Cocktail meatballs. A pound of ground beef, an egg, breadcrumbs, a packet of onion soup mix. For the sauce, grape jelly and chili sauce again, or Heinz 57 and a little brown sugar. Under $3 in 1975. You mix the meat with the egg and breadcrumbs and soup mix. You roll it into small balls and brown them in a skillet. You make the sauce in a saucepan. You combine everything in a chafing dish with toothpicks stuck in the top. Number 7. Homemade granola. 4 cups of rolled oats cost under $1 in 1978. Honey, oil, nuts, coconut, raisins. Total batch cost under $3. Makes 10 servings. You mix the oats with chopped almonds, shredded coconut, and sunflower seeds in a big bowl. You warm honey and oil and vanilla together in a saucepan. You pour the wet over the dry and stir until every oat is coated. You spread it on a sheet pan and bake it at 300 degrees for 30 minutes, stirring every 10 minutes. Number 6. Homemade peanut brittle. A cup of raw peanuts cost 59 cents in 1976. 2 cups of sugar, a cup of corn syrup, a stick of butter, baking soda. Under $2 makes a pound of candy. You boil the sugar, syrup, and water to 300 degrees on a candy thermometer. You stir in the peanuts and the butter. You cook it until the peanuts smell roasted and the mixture turns amber. You add the baking soda and it foams. You pour it fast onto a buttered sheet pan and spread it thin. It sets in 15 minutes. Number 5. Pimento cheese. A pound of sharp cheddar cost $1.29 in 1974. A jar of dromedary pimentos cost 49 cents. Mayonnaise. Under $2. Feeds 6. You grate the cheese by hand on the big holes of the grater. You drain the pimentos and chop them fine. You stir everything together with enough mayonnaise to bind it, plus a pinch of cayenne and black pepper. You chill it for an hour so the flavors come together. Make one of these this week. Just one. Pick the cinnamon sugar toast from entry 24, or the deviled eggs from entry 20, or the pimento cheese from entry 5. Any one of them. The ingredients are already in your kitchen, or they cost less than $5 at the nearest grocery store. Do not eat it standing up. Do not eat it in front of the television. Do not eat it out of the container over the sink. Set the table. Put out a real plate. Fold a napkin next to the fork. Pour yourself a real drink in a real glass. Sit down. Eat it slow. This is not about the food. It never was. It is about the act of treating yourself like you are worth feeding. It is about remembering that somebody once stood in a kitchen and made something from almost nothing so that you could sit at a table and feel loved. That somebody is now you. In the comments below, tell me which one you are making first. Is it the cheese straws from entry 11 or the Rice Krispies treats from entry 7? Pick a side. Tell me a memory. Tell me who made it for you. I am reading every one.
Pinto beans with ham hock. Walk into any rural kitchen from the 1920s through the 1960s, and you'd smell pinto beans simmering before you even opened the door. Across Appalachia and the rural South, farmers grew their own beans, dried them in burlap sacks, and stored them through brutal winters. When hog killing time came in late fall, the ham hocks became the secret weapon for transforming dried beans into something transcendent. You'd soak dried pintos overnight, then simmer them with a smoked ham hock for 4 to 6 hours on a wood stove. That ham hock would slowly surrender its smoky, salty, fatty essence, turning plain beans rich and meaty. The collagen would break down, creating a thick, silky texture that coated every bean. This was poor folk food that fed entire families for days, stretching across dinner, next day's lunch, and even breakfast if you fried the beans in lard. Collard greens with pot liquor. In the rural South, collard greens weren't a side dish. They were a nutritional powerhouse that grew when everything else died and could feed families through the darkest winter months. From the Carolinas through Georgia and Mississippi, collards represented African-American culinary genius meeting Southern agricultural reality. Country families planted collards in late summer, knowing they'd still be harvesting when snow covered the ground. You'd harvest massive leaves, wash them obsessively, slice them into thick ribbons, then simmer them with smoked ham hock or fatback for 2 to 4 hours. The greens would break down, absorbing the smoky, salty, fatty essence of the pork. The cooking liquid, the pot liquor, would turn jade green and become more valuable than the greens themselves. This vitamin-rich broth could revive the sick and provide nutrition when food was scarce. Sowbelly, and black-eyed peas. In the rural South, sowbelly, unsmoked, uncured pork belly, represented the most economical cut of the pig, and paired with black-eyed peas, it sustained sharecroppers and tenant farmers through hard times. Black-eyed peas came to America with enslaved Africans, proving hardy enough to grow in the poorest soil. Sowbelly was pure pork fat, with maybe a thin streak of meat, salted heavily for preservation. You'd cut the sowbelly into chunks and render it slowly in a heavy pot. Add soaked black-eyed peas, cover with water, and simmer for 2 to 3 hours. The peas would absorb the pork fat, turning creamy inside while holding their shape. This was New Year's Day food across the South, eaten for luck and prosperity. But for many families, it was Tuesday night dinner. The peas represented coins, and eating them meant financial security in the coming year. Cornmeal mush. Before oatmeal became the breakfast standard, cornmeal mush fed millions of rural Americans every morning. Corn was cheap, sometimes free if you grew it yourself, and took it to the local mill for grinding. You'd bring water to a boil, slowly whisk in coarse ground cornmeal, stirring constantly to prevent lumps, then simmer for 15 to 20 minutes until thick and creamy. For breakfast, you'd serve it hot with butter melting on top, sorghum molasses or honey, and milk poured around the edges. It stuck to your ribs through a morning of hard farm labor. But here's where country ingenuity shined. Leftover mush would firm up when cold. The next morning, you'd slice that solidified mush into slabs, dredge them in flour, and fry them in bacon grease until crispy and golden. These fried mush cakes became a completely different food. Crunchy outside, creamy inside. Venison stew. When hunting season opened, successful hunts meant venison stew that would feed families through winter weeks. Deer were plentiful, and a single buck could yield 50 to 75 pounds of free meat. You'd cut venison shoulder or neck into rough chunks, brown them hard in bacon grease in a Dutch oven, then add rough chopped onions, carrots, and celery from the root cellar. Some cooks added turnips, parsnips, or rutabagas. Cover with water or stock, add canned tomatoes, then season with salt, pepper, bay leaves, and a splash of vinegar to cut the gamey taste. Let that stew simmer for 3 to 5 hours on the back of a wood stove. The long cooking would break down tough connective tissue and create thick, rich gravy. The venison would transform from tough and chewy into tender chunks that fell apart at the touch of a fork. Brunswick stew. In the rural South, Brunswick stew meant big pots bubbling at community gatherings, church suppers, and family reunions. A thick, tomato-based stew that started with small game meat and ended up thick enough to eat with a fork. Original versions used squirrel, rabbit, or wild game, but most cooks switched to chicken or pork. You'd simmer meat until it fell apart, pull out the bones, shred the meat, then return it to the pot with canned tomatoes, corn cut from the cob, lima beans, onions, and potatoes. Some added okra or hot peppers. The key was using more vegetables than seemed reasonable, because they'd cook down and thicken the stew. Add ketchup or barbecue sauce for sweetness, Worcestershire sauce for umami, then simmer for hours until thick enough that a spoon stood up in it. This was community food, always made in huge batches because neighbors would show up. Chicken bog along the South Carolina Lowcountry and coastal areas. Chicken bog fed crowds at church socials, family reunions, and community fundraisers. Despite the unappetizing name, this one-pot dish of chicken, rice, and sausage became comfort food worth craving. You'd simmer a whole chicken in water until the meat fell off the bone. Then pull out the bones and shred the meat. In that flavorful chicken stock, you'd cook sliced smoked sausage, diced onions, and long-grain rice, letting everything absorb the rich broth. The rice would become creamy and slightly sticky, almost risotto-like but simpler. Season with salt, lots of black pepper, and maybe some hot sauce. The dish got its name because the rice would bog down in the pot, becoming thick and porridge-like. This was economical cooking that stretched one chicken to feed 20 people, bulked up with inexpensive rice and sausage.